Good afternoon, everyone. I've got 1:13. Caucus running a little long, so we're a little bit late getting started. Clerk, if you would go ahead and call the roll.
Senator Albritton.
Here.
Senator Carnley. Senator Coleman. Senator Gudger. Senator Hatcher. Senator Hovey.
Here.
Senator Kelly.
Here.
Senator Coleman Madison.
Here.
Senator Chambliss. Senator Elliott.
I am here, ma'am. Thank you so much. We've got a quorum. Senator Roberts, you are first on our agenda today with SB 228. We're going to try to get that mic fixed while you're coming up here, but I want people to hear what you're saying. Oh. Good save. Like a cat.
SB 228, this deals with real estate and wholesaling in the right to list agreements. This is something that has gone on. We really have two restrictive predatory practices going on, not just here, but around the United States. One, places we're trying to place balanced limits on so-called wholesaling, the marketing and selling for a fee of rights under an agreement to purchase a home. And number two, declares some of these unenforceable and deceptive agreements dealing with the purchase or sale of residential real estate with terms over 3 years recorded at the probate office. So we have an amendment, I believe, which is a friendly amendment from Senator Carnley.
Thank you, Senator Roberts. Senator Carnley, let's go ahead and get your amendment explained, and then we'll get on the amendment committee, and then we'll get back to the bill.
Okay, well, I am not an expert on all real estate, but I was talking to him yesterday about this, and what they were going to do are in his bill. It was talking about the lowering the limit on how long the agreement could be in place, the listing agreement. I was not aware that, a listing could be perpetuated throughout multiple owners, which didn't seem right, even if you bought that property and you had to take on that listing, even if you didn't agree with it. So what this did was, in his bill, brought the limit down to 3 years. Talked with Jeremy Walker and the group there and asked if we could bring it down to a year so we didn't have to continue to perpetuate these listings if that's not what somebody agreed to when they purchased the property, similar to a lien on the property. And so that's what that did. There is a technical change in there for some language. And then it also brings in something that the counties requested, and it deletes lines 186 through 87 that allowed a probate judge to accept or reject an agreement. They felt like it created a liability and a difficult decision for probate judges who were not attorneys always. Shifted some of the existing language up after the deletion, and it replaces the probate court with the circuit court as the appropriate court with jurisdiction on that.
Move favorable.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second on the amendment to adopt the amendment. So we're going to do that. And clerk, if you would call the long roll.
Senator Albritton.
Aye.
Senator Carnley.
Aye.
Senator Coleman. Senator Gudger. Senator Hatcher. Senator Hovey. Senator Kelly.
Aye.
Senator Coleman Madison.
Aye.
Senator Chambliss. Senator Elliott.
Aye. And the amendment is adopted. Are there any further questions for the bill's sponsor?
Move for favorable.
I have a motion by Senator Albritton, a second by Senator Gudger. We're going to use a previous roll unless there is any objection. Hearing none, the bill receives a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you,
Senator
members.
Roberts. Next up, we have SB 214 by Senator Weaver. Senator Weaver, if you'll give that mic a try and see if it's magically come to life, I'd appreciate it. Is there a try switch and see what we can do there? There.
Test.
There.
Okay. Senator Roberts made that look so easy. Do you think my bill's going to be just that easy?
No, ma'am. I do not. But let's talk about it anyway. So go ahead, Senator Weaver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. I'm here today to present to you SB 214. And SB 214 confirms and clarifies the code that makes motor vehicle registration and the related system used to actually register a motor vehicle the responsibility of the applicable county officials. And, we added a sentence that has sparked a little conversation over the weekend and over the end of last week. And I just want to clarify that the purpose of this bill is not to cause problems with essential statewide services, to strictly focus on the motor vehicle registration being the responsibility of the county. So to give you a little bit of history on this, during the 2022 legislative session, SB 211 calling for the titling of vessels, the boat titling that you may remember from last year in Alabama was passed. Do you remember that bill?
Yes, ma'am.
So the Department of Revenue then issued an RFP in August of last year that only partially related to that act. And this RFP was titled Vessel Titling System, but very significant and unrelated requirements were added, including a state-sponsored Alabama motor vehicle registration system that was not desired by the applicable county officials. This RFP was prepared and the related contract was approved without the knowledge or input of any of the applicable probate judge, license commissioner, revenue commissioner, or any other county licensing official whose offices and day-to-day operations this would significantly impact. And these county officials, many of who I represent that are here today, are responsible for registration and licensing in Alabama, but were not notified that the RFP was being developed or asked to provide any input on the functional requirements of the appropriate qualifications for the provider. The exclusion of the county officials is especially problematic since motor vehicle registration in Alabama is unique and extremely complex based on the very significant amount of local legislation and county-specific rules, fees, and taxes. The boat titling system is required to be operational by January 1 of 2024, and this system is certainly needed. But the addition of the other systems complicates what should be a relatively simple and straightforward project while creating substantial issues for the applicable county officials. Both the Alabama Probate Judges Association and the Alabama Association of Tax Administrators have expressed their strong support for SB 214 because of the issues related to the proposed state-sponsored Alabama motor vehicle registration system. Many of these critical county officials from these two organizations made time in their schedules to be here today and to show support of this bill. And how many of you are from those two organizations, I guess is my question. So, a significant, I had no idea they were all coming today, but thank you all for being here today. Let's see where I was. So the inclusion of a state-sponsored Alabama motor vehicle registration system significantly increased the scope of the related project because an out-of-state company was awarded the contract after submitting the only qualified proposal is being asked to basically duplicate the very strong motor vehicle registration system that is already in production and developed over many years in partnership with Alabama counties. In my opinion, any project like this should be extremely collaborative with the county stakeholders, and everything should be transparent in the discussion. So again, this bill only focuses on making motor vehicle registration a responsibility of the counties, and we have no reason to want to cause problems with essential statewide services, and we're happy to have any discussions or questions that you might have.
Oh, I think we're going to get some. So I thank you, Senator Weaver. Glad to know I'm not the only one who generates some controversy from time to time. Senator Coleman Madison, do you have a question for the sponsor? Okay, Senator Coleman Madison.
Good afternoon, Senator Weaver. A question for you. If this goes into, well, I guess it's already in effect. You said this was all in the boat bill?
So it's my understanding that the boat vesseling title only was specifically related to boat vesseling.
And that's what we thought. Sometimes have to.
But somehow there got to be some requirements for motor vehicle registration.
That part was never emphasized. I wonder who the sponsor was. Moving right along.
So
that's the question.
I think there's a plan here. We're going to walk through some of these open public hearing, and I think you're going to get some of your answers to your questions from some of the folks.
Well, the one question that I want to ask is that if there's a centralized or wherever, maybe in several counties, does the bill state, the other bill, how monies are going to be appropriated back to those counties where the tag owner lives? And is this other party getting their piece out of it? I mean, it seems like if that's the case, why are you putting it? You can't answer that question. I wonder why you're putting a third person in there for the county that should be doing it, just go direct. But that's just throw out, Mr. Chair.
And I think your question's out there, and let's see if some of our folks that are here to talk about it can answer it. Senator Weaver, I'm going to count you as a proponent of your bill. So I'm going to have the next signed up opponent from the Department of Revenue. We've got Cameron and Mary Martin Mitchell here. So I'm going to let y'all pick who wants to go, or y'all tag team it. Come on up. Both y'all are kind of a team anyway. So
Hey, good afternoon.
welcome.
Thank you. I'm Cameron Clark, and yes, Mary Martin's right here with me. So currently, Aldor is opposed to the bill as written. The centralized registration of motor vehicles is strictly prohibited by law. We don't guess that. There are two caveats to the registration of motor vehicles, and that is the International Registration Plan, which is the large trucks, and fleet vehicles. Those are the only two statutory caveats. So that is a portion of why portions of that may have been mentioned in the RFP. Now, otherwise, vehicles are always done at the local level, and that's always an intention of the Department of Revenue. Aldar is tasked with providing uniformity over the registration process. So tags, registration decals, the registration receipts, but also we act as a data hub. So registration information from the local officials flows back down to the Department of Revenue. Every night, live cycle, we push it back out. So we always have and run on updated registration information. We also take that same registration information and flow it outward to other systems throughout the state. So in essence, we just act as a data hub. We manage registration information. We don't manage the registration of the vehicle. We just manage the data. So in essence, the way this is currently written, restricting a state agency from managing a data system, it would in essence cease a lot of essential services the department in essence flows to others. For example, we flow data continuously to ALEA for law enforcement purposes. We flow data to DOT on the registration of heavy use of vehicles for their type of funding for their roads and bridges. But right now, as written, it would cease the operation of OVIS, which is the Online Vehicle Information System, the Mandatory Liability Insurance Program. It would cease services for the Heavy Vehicle Use Tax Verification System, the Unclaimed Abandoned Motor Vehicle Portal, LEADS, which is the Alabama Law Enforcement System, ALEA Driver's License Interface Lookup. It would also cease operations for the Department of Corrections Plate Builder System, law enforcement, title and registration files. So in essence, whenever anybody gets pulled over, law enforcement immediately pulls up all the registration data along with mandatory liability insurance. That's a continuous basis that's funded and flowed back and forth between the agencies. It would also make Alabama out of compliance with the and no longer be a participant in the International Registration Plan and the International Fuel Tax Agreement. So I think, like as I said, as written, the department would be opposed to this because the management, we don't want to manage, we don't want to register vehicles. We have those two caveats, International Registration Plan and fleet vehicles. We do feel like the management relates directly to the management of the data. So we would be against this bill. And I think Mary Martin was going to hit on a few of the other topics that may have been brought up. So.
Yes, and I think Senator Coleman Madison, maybe a little bit to your question, if I was understanding it correctly. But yes, there was a bill to go out and title vessels, which we're proud and ecstatic that Alabama is going to have this. I think it's good for the citizens of Alabama, especially, you know, hurricanes and whatnot and lending institutions across the state. The Department of Revenue was supplanted in that bill after the second reading in the second house because there was supposed to be some synergy and efficiency between vehicle titling, which the Alabama Department of Revenue has always done since that became a thing in the 1970s, and vessel titling, which makes sense for efficiencies, in my opinion. So when we went out to say, how are we going to quickly, from the end of last session to January 1, 2024, be able to effectively across all platforms, title these vessels, do it appropriately in the time frame of the act. We were able to go look at our current systems. We realized that there were some inefficiencies, some things we can do better, and that led us to putting out this RFP. An RFP is public knowledge to anybody who would like to engage with us during that process. It's put on the website. It clearly stated, I'd be happy to give any member of the committee a copy of the RFP. It's been provided to local officials that have requested for it, as well as the responses. We had 2 responses. It was drafted in a way that we had someone with expertise in these items, because based on that laundry list that Cameron just gave you, the data management hub is very integral to the state of Alabama, and it should be done correctly and with someone who knows what they're doing from a data security standpoint, especially since we've seen different, hackings and whatnot. So we thought, what can we do better, and how do we get that platform from vehicles to vessels? And we know that there's intentions to start titling other type property across the state of Alabama. We want this system to be able to do that. So if y'all have questions about the system or the RFP, I'm happy to engage one-on-one, provide any information, or answer any of those questions.
Thank you, Ms. Mitchell. If y'all would stick around, don't run off, because we may call you back up here at the end. Members, we've got a bunch of people that have traveled a long ways, and I'd like for them all to be able to, whoever wants to speak, to be able to speak. And we have an hour before we go on the floor. So my intention is to let folks speak. If we start saying stuff that's repetitive, I may cut you off if we're saying the same thing over and over again. But other than that, I want y'all to say your piece, and you got your members here to listen. We have Talmadge East up next. Welcome, sir.
Hey.
As a proponent of the bill.
All righty. My name is Talmadge East. For those who have not met me, I'm the probate judge from Tallapoosa County. Would be remiss if I didn't say hello to Senator Chambliss and Senator Hovey, who have the distinction of representing the greatest county in the state of Alabama. I want to touch on a little bit about what they said, and I think some of our other speakers will touch on the details of that a little more. But I think, it appears to me what we have a little bit of is a little bit of smoke and mirrors and boogeyman out here about what this bill does. But if you look at the text of the bill itself, if it did any of those things that they're talking about it doing, then why are there so minor changes in the bill? If they were not creating a centralized system, if they were not interested in doing any of those things, all it does is codify what the intent of the legislature already was. Previous legislatures have made it their intent that there will be no centralized registration system in Alabama. This codifies that and makes it retroactive to October 1st, 2022. Well, if they weren't doing that anyway, then why does the retroactivity matter? And if they were doing that, why were they doing that as opposed to the law as it exists now? So it is our contention that they should not have had a centralized system prior to this. They should not have a centralized system going forward, and that all this bill does is codify what the intent of previous legislatures and hopefully this legislature will be as well. And I feel like the bill is pretty straightforward. The strike-throughs are there for you to read. I think you have to stretch yourself to come up with a interpretation of this law to say that that we're all this bad things are going to happen. I feel like the legislature's already made their intent clear. We just seek to codify that intent because we feel like there have been steps made where we were never included. The people, the 67 people, 68 probate judges, and sometimes it's tax officials, and depends on your county, but tag individuals, people who issue car tags, we're the people who manage this. And I feel like that is a good thing. I feel like, and oftentimes this legislature said that we don't want a bureaucrat in Montgomery saying, this is how you should do things in your county. And it allows us the ability to be innovative, to do things more efficiently. And I feel like the people in my county are satisfied with the way we do that. And if they're not, then I hope they'll throw me out and get somebody else who can do it better. But I don't feel like that a centralized system is what the people of Alabama want. I don't feel like it's what the people of previous legislatures have wanted. And I do not feel like it is what the current legislature would like, although it is within their right to decide what they like. So it is our contention that this bill codifies what the legislature's already intended. And I'd be glad to take any questions if anybody has any, but I would encourage your strong support of this bill. It's supported by the Alabama Probate Judge Association, Tax Association, the Association of County Commissioners, basically everybody who's involved with at a local level. So we feel like we're unified in that support.
Thank you, Judge.
All right.
Next up, we have Chris Reeder from Aaliyah as an opponent. Mr. Reeder, welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Chris Reeder. I'm Director of Government Affairs for Aaliyah. I'll be real brief on this. First off, Aaliyah does not register vehicles, nor do we want to register, title any other vehicles or boats or anything else that may come our way. However, what our concern about this is, as the Department of Revenue alluded to, is the information and the ability of the state agency to push it out to individuals within the community, the law enforcement community. Aaliyah runs a program called LETS. It's a law enforcement tactical system. It's available in every police cruiser in the state of Alabama. It allows you to type in a license plate number. It shows you the registration of that vehicle, who's in that vehicle, or who that vehicle's registered for, I should say. And if that vehicle has insurance, if it's properly paid its registration fee, or if that operator of that vehicle has a warrant, or there's something else to be aware of, such as the person is on the prohibited persons database for firearms. Our concern about the bill is the way it is written and the prohibition on having a state agency manage the data and manage a vehicle registration thing is it could potentially impact LETS and our ability to maintain a statewide database for vehicles on the roadways. So with that being said, I'll take a step back and answer any questions about LETS that y'all may have.
Thank you, Mr. Reeder. Any questions? Okay, we're going to move on to Barry Willingham from Coleman. Garland, you know that guy? There you go. Welcome to the committee, sir.
Good evening. Barry Willingham, Revenue Commissioner, Coleman County. I'm the current president of the Association of Alabama Tax Administrators as well. Just to give you a little background, Revenue Commissioner in Coleman, just like the counties are all different. 67 counties, we do a lot of things different because the ad valorem taxes is so locally assessed, and motor vehicles. I work the counter most every day. Property tax, motor vehicles is a complicated issue. As a concerned citizen, when this RFP went out, at first it was a professional service contract back in February of 22. That concerned me that we had a $38.5 million professional service contract that was signed off on before anybody even knew about it. Nobody knew about it on the local level. I know they talk about the RFP was issued in August, but we have a local, not a delegation, but a statewide call every month that they chose not to tell anybody on this call that there was a professional service contract issued, that there was an RFP issued. They thought we should have to go out and find that on our own. And it was spoken that, well, the current vendor was on that call as well, so we didn't think it was appropriate to bring it up that the RFP was being issued to another company. Right now, due to competition, we have several vendors in the state that offer a local registration system that works very well because of competition. Right now, there's no competition for the state on the title system, so no local vendor could actually even bid on the RFP. Only this national company that was in multiple states that actually issues titles. University of Alabama, CAPS, is who administers the title system currently. So nobody in the state of Alabama even would have qualified it. Even University of Alabama wouldn't have qualified it because you'd have to have a system in 2 states. So they made an RFP so specific that nobody in the state of Alabama, even their current vendor, could even qualify for it. So that was a main issue that we felt like there was too much secrecy and no open government when this all occurred. Our association is 100% back this bill. We feel like that the way we do it now works, and the system that they're offering is free to the counties if you choose to go all in. You know how much free cost? A lot more employees, because we're a lot more innovative, and you've got some officials sometimes that are not keen on the software they use. So I'll be entertaining any questions you might have, and I hope that we come out with a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate you coming. Mr. Patterson, you're up next as an opponent.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I don't want to repeat what the Department of Revenue said, but I specifically was interested in the fleet registration system. We represent a number of fleet companies that own fleets of vehicles, and they very much rely on this centralized system of data transfer. We don't want to register them at the state. That's fine to register them at the counties, but this system does rely on the centralized transfer of data. But I was just looking at the bill as the gentleman before me was speaking, saying that this bill doesn't really do anything. I think it's maybe just a matter of language. This maybe that we could tighten up the language in the bill, but the current law prohibits a central registration. But what this bill adds, in addition to, is being prohibited as a statewide motor vehicle registration system, and it also would prohibit any motor vehicle registration system managed or provided by a state agency. So I think it does expand on what is prohibited. What that exactly means may be open to question. Maybe we can improve on the language, but I think it does create some concern that there would not be the ability to transfer data in a centralized fashion and interface with other agencies. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. Ms. Laurie Hall. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, committee and senators. Thank you. I'm Laurie Hall, the probate judge in Marengo County and immediate past president of the Probate Judges Association and also a member of the AATA. We appreciate your time and entertaining our concerns about this bill. The concerns that have been mentioned by the opponents to the bill would be very justified if they were legitimate. Unfortunately, there's been some false information that's been going around about what this bill actually does. You've got a packet, I believe, that's been handed to you that has some bullet points. It's also got a copy of the bill and then history. Some of my colleagues have already explained some of this to you, but I want to make sure that you have a chance to read through that, if you will, following this committee meeting. We've discussed the RFP, which was issued some time ago. We have concerns in amongst our associations about the way it was written. We also have concerns about the fact that we're spending $39 million to an outside of the state company and that only one company qualified under the way the RFP was written. That said, that's been done. We have some concerns about the information that's been distributed, and we're hoping that we can clear that up for you today. If you will look in the language of the bill, there are very few changes to the current code section that's written. The comment data system has been made. The comment data, specifically the term data, has been made. There is nowhere in the language of this bill or the changes that are being proposed where data is addressed. This is simply a registration system. The RFP that was written and issued solicited a title system. It revamped the current vehicle title system and also solicited writing a vehicle registration system. The Department of Revenue indicated earlier today that they were not interested in registering vehicles. If that were true, they would not have a vehicle registration system that they have been able to solicit to our 67 counties as it stands right now. There is a registration system that is being proposed to our 67 counties, and it's been proposed to us as free. That is in violation of the law as it currently stands. The reason that we are proposing this bill is to clarify any ambiguity in the interpretation that the Department of Revenue or any other state agency has with the way the law is currently written. It says very clearly that centralized vehicle registration is not lawful. Nowhere else in the Code of Alabama, and I've been practicing law for over 15 years, have I seen the intent of the legislature included in the actual language of the code. It's almost always in the comments, but clearly this was stated. It is the intent of the legislature that a centralized registration system shall not be lawful. I do want to clarify that The state of Alabama, the Department of Revenue they mentioned to us that this bill would stop transmission of information from the registration system to law enforcement. I'm a member of AGAIC, the Alabama Justice of Information Commission. We had a meeting last week. We discussed ALEA, we discussed LETS. This bill does not change the transmission of this information at all. The registration, which is simply the processing of the tags and the certificate of registration at the county level, is all that we're discussing. We want to keep that in the county as it states currently in the code right now. The data would still be processed through the state data systems, which are currently FORT, MV-TRIP, the OVIS, MLI, LEADS, ALEA, LETS. None of that data would be impacted at all by passage of this registration bill. It is simply keeping registration at the local level. All of our constituents come to us, your constituents, my constituents. They want to get their vehicles registered in their home county. They don't want to be slowed down by a state system that would absolutely slow down the process in our offices. It would cause frustration. It would be phone calls to me, which would ultimately be phone calls to you by frustrated consumers for standing in line and dealing with a state system that we do not need. Again, the concerns that were stated to you by the state agencies would be very concerning if they were legitimate, but they are not. And it's unfortunate that they've gotten poor information, but this would solely keep the law as is to keep the centralized registration system with the counties and not make it where the state could take over the centralized registration. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Judge Hall. We appreciate any questions for the judge. Okay, very good. Mr. Colson, you're up next.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak. And this is more to highlight some unintended consequences than to state opposition. I'm Mark Colson with the Alabama Trucking Association. I just want to let you all know that it was referenced earlier, but the Department of Revenue does have statutory authority to administer two centralized programs that are essential for the commercial motor vehicle industry and that are involved in interstate commerce. One is the International Registration Plan. It's commonly referred to as IRP. That's where a commercial vehicle registration agreement between 48 contiguous states, Washington, D.C., and 10 Canadian provinces. This allows the base jurisdiction to process the IRP license application, collect the fees for the member jurisdictions, and distribute those fees based on percentage of miles that are traveled by the fleet in each member jurisdiction. It's actually one of those government programs that happens in America and Canada that works really well. And it's sent to the place that's owed the money, so whatever those jurisdictions are. The other is the International Fuel Tax Agreement, often called IFTA. It's the same type of agreement internationally now because Canada is involved, and it also does the same thing with fuel taxes. So commercial motor vehicles that are involved in interstate commerce, they pay fuel taxes quarterly in their home jurisdiction, and those get distributed to all of the different jurisdictions they're owed money to throughout America and Canada. And again, it works really well. There is statutory authority that addresses those, and I believe this could easily be made, this legislation, and thanks to the sponsor for a conversation on this, not the intent to address these two programs, and personally believe that this legislation could easily be either amended or just clarified to not address those two central programs. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Colson. Next, we have Rick Hayes. Good afternoon, Mr. Hayes. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Mr. Chairman. Very quickly, I had a fairly long piece to read here, but most all of the items have been discussed already, so I'll try to be fairly quick for you. My name is Rick Hayes. I'm president of Ingenuity. Represent about 41 registration customers throughout the state. We've had a lot of history here. We've done a lot of work dating back to 2007. On tags in the state, as it's commonly known. Very familiar with all the issues related to this. Understand, as we looked at this, we were all very shocked with what happened, realizing the law as it's written today. And Fort brought up, Mr. Patterson, you brought up Fort, the Fort system. You may not be aware of this, but we actually built the Fort system. I'm very familiar with what happened with that and the code that was put in place in 2019 that allowed for Fort. So Fort, IRP, IFTA, all of those items clearly would not be impacted by 214. They're separate issues and certainly were not the intent of 214 from my reading of it. So I don't see any issue related to those. If there's any clarity that might possibly be needed, it's simply the definition of motor vehicle registration system. It should be clear. It is really clear. It's clear in the code today. There's a couple different sections where registration is addressed and addresses this. But if it's not, and there's comfort level in just adding something very simple to do that, we by all means would support any change to that. We just see that this, as it sits today, would cause problem for many, many counties and how they operate today. Again, to the issue of surprised by it, I will tell you that sitting on those calls, we get very involved in the calls representing so many customers. Our partners have come to us and asked us to do a lot of customized things for them, a lot of creative things and solve problems, solve solutions. And as we sit through those and work with them, they bring great solutions. We all work together to come up with great things. We were shocked when this came out. Again, the public reference, we had many conversations. We had no idea. None of the counties had any idea. So in simply trying to address this, when we read the details of the code, of the bill, we think it very clearly addresses everything. If anything, a simple amendment potentially to address that might be at hand. But I think it says it clearly today as it is.
Thank you, Mr. Hayes.
Thank you.
Ms. Mitchell, Ms. Clark, do y'all want to come back up and bookend this at all? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, again, I'm Mary Martin Mitchell with the Alabama Department of Revenue. And just to make sure everybody understands, I feel like we talked about the RFP, but maybe the issue, what I understand after hearing some of the proponents of Senate Bill 214 is with the product that was secured through that RFP, it's an off-the-shelf product that is then customized and configured to whatever jurisdiction. This vendor over the last 10 years has done this type software in 17 jurisdictions. With that, they do have a plugin to allow registration at the local level, dealing with the tags, I think was the comment that Mr. Hayes said. That was offered to locals if they would like to consider that at the local level. They can choose it or they can stick with their custom product that is probably tailored to their services. We would assume that would be the choice that would avail every time. There are some underserved communities that may need a choice, and it's already paid for because we need this product for the titling. So I don't know if that point was made clear to the committee members. If you have a question on that, that is some of the backstory on the solicitation of registration.
Any questions for Ms. Mitchell? Okay. Yep. Senator Kelly.
So it seems like that some of the opponents of this seem to think that there's just a few things that could be adjusted and it would be all right with them. And so my curiosity is, from your vantage point, is of those that have been mentioned, what are your views to where something could be changed to where it would make it work better?
Yes, Senator Kelly, I think it's that additional sentence that everybody's kind of highlighted. And I think at best it's ambiguity, which we don't want in the law because we've had different sides read it different ways from all different perspectives. So that's something that we're willing to come work on. Speak with the sponsor. We spoke with her very briefly, but we did want to, be able to address more in detail some of these concerns. And we've spoken with local officials prior to this hearing about this and the procurement process and invited them to the Gordon Parsons building. So, and actually with the implementation of the titling system, we have been working with them as well. So.
Thank you, Ms. Mitchell. That's going to conclude our public hearing portion of this. Senator Weaver, welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
What do you think?
Well, seems like we do a little work on this, we might all could get to a place where we're comfortable. I'm not quite sure we're there today. Would like the opportunity to work on an amendment or language or let the the two parties kind of work together to see if we can come to an agreement on something that would work. Again, our goal is to focus on motor vehicle registration only. We are not trying to get into any essential statewide data services. And if you are agreeable, I think I would like to carry this over to the call of the chair, give the parties an opportunity to work on some resolution, and then we'll bring it back to the committee to see what we can go from there.
Sounds good to me. The chair's going to make that motion on behalf of Senator Weaver. It's going to be seconded by Senator Coleman Madison using previous rule without objection. Okay, we got to carry it over.
Okay. And if it's okay, I would like to invite all of the interested parties to take this opportunity to maybe have some productive conversations today to see if we could, while we're all here, try to work on some language that might benefit everyone. And I know that we have to go in just a few minutes, but I'll go over to the other room there for anyone who wants to come over and have a conversation. I may not be able to stay the whole time, but maybe they could continue the conversation even after I go to the floor.
If not, I checked and room 200 is available. So I think you've got some folks here. We may have enough room down there. Thank you all. Committee's adjourned. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.